13 tragic final photos of black celebs that made fans cry in disbelief. A camera shutter freezes a single moment in time, entirely blind to the doom waiting just around the corner. A effortless flash on the red carpet or a smiling backstage selfie is all it takes to unintentionally capture the haunting final breath before permanent silence takes over. In black entertainment, public image projects invincibility. Yet while these cultural icons radiated joy under flashing paparazzi lights, many were silently standing on the edge of tragedy. Behind their brightest smiles lay fatal diagnoses, mental health battles, or impending accidents cloaked in secrecy. Today on Black Hollywood Uncut, we expose the chilling stories behind 13 tragic final photos of legendary black stars. Subscribe and hit that notification bell. Watch until the very end, because the haunting final moments on our countdown will leave you devastated. Michael Jackson died age 50 in 2009. Michael Jackson died at age 50 in 2009. And few final images in entertainment history have carried as much shock, sadness, and controversy as the photo of him lying motionless on a hospital gurney. For decades, Michael was not just a singer. He was the king of pop, the artist who changed music videos, stage performance, dance, fashion, and global celebrity forever. From Thriller to Billie Jean, from the moonwalk to sold-out stadiums, he built a world where every movement seemed larger than life. But in his final months, the image of Michael Jackson was very different from the legend fans remembered. He was preparing for the This Is It concert series, a comeback that was supposed to remind the world why he had once stood above everyone else. On stage during rehearsals, he could still move with precision. His timing was still sharp. His presence still carried that strange electricity only Michael had. But behind the rehearsals, his body was struggling. Sleep had become one of his biggest battles. Reports later showed that powerful medications were being used in his attempt to rest, including propofol and other sedatives. His frame appeared thinner, his energy uneven, and the pressure around the comeback was enormous. To the outside world, Michael was preparing for another historic moment. Behind closed doors, he was fighting exhaustion, anxiety, and physical decline. On June 25, 2009, everything ended suddenly inside his Los Angeles home. Emergency responders rushed him to the hospital, but doctors could not save him. The cause of death was later ruled acute propofol and benzodiazepine intoxication, and his personal physician, Dr. Conrad Murray, was later convicted of involuntary manslaughter. The photos shown during the 2011 trial stunned the world because it destroyed the illusion of immortality. Just one day earlier, Michael had been rehearsing, dancing, and preparing to return to the stage. Then, in that final image, the man who once commanded millions appeared painfully still. Michael Jackson's final photo remains haunting because it reminds us that even the biggest icon on earth was still human. Behind the glove, the lights, and the impossible fame was a fragile man carrying pressure no audience could fully see. Prince died at age 57 in 2016. Prince died at age 57 in 2016. And his final chapter remains one of the most unsettling stories in modern music. For decades, Prince seemed almost untouchable. A musical genius who could sing, write, produce, play nearly every instrument, and command the stage with a presence no one could duplicate. He was not simply an entertainer. He was a universe of sound, color, mystery, and control. From Purple Rain to When Doves Cry, from funk to rock to soul, Prince built a legacy that refused to fit inside one category. But near the end of his life, the man who once moved across the stage with explosive energy was quietly dealing with physical pain. Years of performing had taken a serious toll on his body. Hip and joint problems, exhaustion, and the pressure of maintaining his legendary image created a private struggle that fans could not fully see. Publicly, Prince still carried elegance and mystery. Privately, his health was becoming more fragile. The transcript describes one of the last public images of Prince, riding a bicycle alone around Paisley Park. It is a simple image, but that is what makes it so haunting. There was no stadium, no spotlight, no screaming crowd. Just Prince, dressed plainly, moving slowly through the grounds of the creative home he had built. For fans, the image feels almost impossible to process. A man who once seemed larger than life, appearing quiet, thin, and deeply human. In the days before his death, concerns about his health grew stronger. He had experienced a medical emergency during travel, and reports later revealed that opioid pain medication had become part of the story. On April 21, 2016, Prince was found unresponsive inside an elevator at Paisley Park. His death was later ruled an accidental fentanyl overdose. What makes Prince's final image so powerful is not only the tragedy that followed, it is the contrast. The world remembered him as a fearless performer in purple lights, a man who seemed to bend music to his will. But that quiet bike ride showed another side. Private, vulnerable, and painfully mortal. Prince's story reminds us that genius does not protect the body from pain. Behind the mystery, the style, and the legend was a man carrying more than most people ever knew. Whitney Houston, die age 48, in 2012. Whitney Houston died at age 48 in 2012, and her final images remain some of the most heartbreaking and controversial in music history. To the world, Whitney was the voice, a singer so gifted that her sound seemed almost effortless. She could lift a song from softness to power in a way that made audiences hold their breath. From I Will Always Love You to Greatest Love of All, Whitney became a symbol of beauty, elegance, and vocal perfection. But behind that perfect voice was a woman carrying pain the public often judged more than understood. By the final years of her life, Whitney's image had changed dramatically. The pressure of fame, a highly publicized marriage, substance struggles, damaged relationships, and constant media attention had worn her down. People remembered the young woman with the bright smile and impossible voice, but the woman behind the headlines was fighting battles that had lasted for years. Her body, her voice, and her spirit had all been affected. On February 11, 2012, Whitney was found unresponsive in a bathtub at the Beverly Hilton Hotel, just before one of the biggest music events of the year. Her death was later ruled an accidental drowning, with heart disease and cocaine use listed as contributing factors. The news shook the entire world. Fans were not just mourning a celebrity, they were mourning a voice that had carried weddings, heartbreaks, church moments, and memories across generations. The transcript focuses on the open casket photo that was taken during a private viewing and later published, causing public outrage. That image became painful, not because it showed glamour, but because it exposed a final private moment that many believed should have remained protected. Whitney was dressed beautifully, surrounded by symbols of love and farewell, but the stillness of the image was devastating. The woman who once filled arenas with sound was now silent. For many fans, that photo felt like a violation. Even after death, Whitney could not escape the public's hunger to see every part of her life. But her story should never end with that image. Whitney Houston was more than scandal, addiction, or tragedy. She was a once-in-a-generation talent whose voice changed music forever. Her final photo may haunt people, but her legacy still sings louder than the headlines. Bob Marley died, age 36, in 1981. Bob Marley died at age 36 in 1981, but the final images connected to his last days still carry a sadness that fans around the world have never forgotten. To millions, Bob Marley was more than a reggae singer. He was a voice of peace, resistance, spirituality, and freedom. His music crossed borders, languages, and generations. Songs like One Love, Redemption Song, and No Woman, No Cry turned him into a global symbol of hope. But behind the message of unity was a man whose body was quietly losing a battle he could not overcome. The illness began years earlier, after a dark spot appeared under his toenail. What first seemed small was later diagnosed as a serious form of melanoma. Marley chose not to have the toe amputated, a decision often connected to his beliefs and his way of understanding the body, spirit, and identity. Over time, the cancer spread. Even as his health worsened, he kept performing, kept traveling, and kept giving fans the energy of a man who seemed impossible to stop. By 1980, the decline became impossible to hide. His body grew weaker, his appearance changed, and the disease had moved beyond what ordinary treatment could repair. He sought treatment in Germany under Dr. Josef Eisels, where doctors tried alternative and conservative therapies. But the illness had already taken too much. The transcript describes a final photo of Marley, looking painfully thin, with his famous dreadlocks gone, and his body almost unrecognizable. Whether every detail of that image can be confirmed exactly, the emotional truth remains clear. The world's great reggae prophet was being physically erased while his spirit still seemed awake. What makes Bob Marley's final image so haunting is the contrast between body and soul. His frame looked fragile, but his eyes still carried calm. The man who had sung about freedom was now trapped inside a failing body, far from Jamaica, far from the stage, and far from the life he wanted to return to. On May 11, 1981, Bob Marley died in Miami while trying to get back home. He never reached Jamaica, but his music did. His body stopped, yet his message kept traveling, louder, wider, and more eternal than death itself.
Tupac Shakur died aged 25 in 1996. Tupac Shakur died at age 25 in 1996. And the final photo of him inside a black BMW in Las Vegas has become one of the most chilling images in hip-hop history. In that picture, Tupac is still alive, still smiling, still carrying the confidence of a man who seemed untouchable. He is sitting in the passenger seat beside Suge Knight after the Mike Tyson fight on September 7, 1996. Street lights shine across his face. His jewelry catches the glow. His expression looks relaxed, almost playful. Nothing in the image tells you that violence is only minutes away. That is what makes the photo so painful. Tupac was not just another rapper enjoying fame. He was one of the most powerful voices of his generation. A poet, actor, rebel, and cultural figure who turned anger, trauma, ambition, and social reality into music. Songs like Dear Mama, Changes, and California Love show different sides of him. The son, the fighter, the thinker, the star. He could sound wounded in one song and fearless in the next. That contradiction made him unforgettable. But by 1996, Tupac's life was surrounded by pressure. The rivalry between East Coast and West Coast rap had created a dangerous atmosphere. Fame brought money and attention, but it also brought enemies, surveillance, suspicion, and a constant feeling that trouble was never far away. Las Vegas looked bright that night, but underneath the luxury and celebration, tension was already moving. After leaving the fight, Tupac and Suge Knight were stopped at a red light near the Las Vegas Strip. A car pulled up beside them. Gunshots erupted. Tupac was hit multiple times. The same man who had been smiling in the photo moments earlier was suddenly fighting for his life. For 6 days, fans waited, hoping the story would somehow turn around. But on September 13, 1996, Tupac Shakur died from his injuries. His final photo remains powerful because it captures the last breath of normalcy before everything changed. It shows a young man still full of life, unaware that history was about to freeze him forever at 25. Tupac's death ended a life, but not a voice. Decades later, people still argue over his legacy, his message, and the future he never got to finish.
Kobe Bryant died age 41 in 2020. Kobe Bryant died at age 41 in 2020, and one of the final photos connected to his life is heartbreaking because of how ordinary it looks. There is no championship trophy in the frame, no roaring arena, no final buzzer, and no crowd chanting his name. Instead, Kobe is standing near a basketball court, watching his daughter Gianna play. For a man who had spent 20 years building one of the most legendary careers in sports, that quiet moment showed a different side of him, not the fierce competitor, not the 5-time NBA champion, but a father fully present for his child. Kobe Bryant was more than a basketball player. He became a global symbol of discipline, obsession, and the relentless pursuit of greatness. The Mamba mentality was not just a slogan. It became a philosophy for athletes, artists, students, and dreamers around the world. He gave everything to the Los Angeles Lakers, from his teenage debut to his final 60-point game. But after retirement, Kobe seemed to be entering a new chapter that was softer, wiser, and deeply connected to family. That is what makes his final images so painful. On January 25, 2020, Kobe was seen at the Mamba Sports Academy, watching Gianna play basketball. His attention was not on himself anymore. It was on her growth, her confidence, her future. He was coaching, guiding, and becoming the kind of mentor he had once needed. Fans later looked at that image and realized they were not just seeing a father at a game. They were seeing one of his last, peaceful moments. The next morning, January 26, 2020, Kobe, Gianna, and others boarded a helicopter headed to a youth basketball event. Thick fog covered parts of Southern California. The flight ended in tragedy when the helicopter crashed into a hillside in Calabasas. No one on board survived. Kobe's final photo remains powerful because it shows a legend after the spotlight, living inside the role that may have mattered most to him. His career made him famous, but fatherhood revealed his heart. The tragedy was not only the loss of Kobe Bryant, the icon. It was the loss of a father, a daughter, and a future that was still being written. Aretha Franklin died, age 76, in 2018. Aretha Franklin died at age 76 in 2018, and the final public images of her open casket viewing carried the weight of royalty, grief, and musical history all at once. To the world, Aretha was not simply a singer. She was the queen of soul, a voice that could turn pain into power and turn a single word into a movement. When she sang Respect, it became more than a song. It became a demand, an anthem, and a reflection of Black pride, womanhood, and civil rights-era strength. But in her final years, Aretha's body was fighting a private battle. She had been living with pancreatic cancer, an illness that slowly weakened her health and forced her to step away from performing. For a woman who had spent her life commanding stages, silence must have carried its own kind of pain. The transcript describes her final days inside her home in Bloomfield Hills, surrounded by memory, music, and family. While some details are written dramatically, the heart of the story is true. The Queen of Soul was nearing the end of a long and difficult health struggle. On August 16, 2018, Aretha Franklin passed away at home, surrounded by loved ones. The news felt like the closing of a major chapter in American music. Fans did not just mourn a celebrity. They mourned a voice that had lived inside weddings, church services, protests, heartbreaks, and family memories for generations. Days later, during her public viewing in Detroit, Aretha was placed in an open gold casket. The image became unforgettable. She was dressed with elegance, surrounded by flowers, and presented with the dignity of a woman who had spent her life carrying a crown no one could take away. It was not just a farewell. It felt like a royal viewing for a cultural queen. What makes that final image so powerful is the contrast between stillness and legacy. Aretha's voice was silent, but everything around her seemed to echo what she had built: strength,
glamour, faith, and command. Her death ended a life, but not her presence. Aretha Franklin remains one of the rare artists whose voice still feels alive every time it plays. Bold, wounded, sacred, and impossible to replace. James Brown died age 73 in 2006. James Brown died at age 73 in 2006, and the image of him lying in a gold-colored casket at the Apollo Theater became one of the most unforgettable farewell scenes in music history. For decades, James Brown was not just a singer. He was the godfather of soul, a force of rhythm, sweat, movement, and command. He changed the structure of popular music, helped shape funk, influenced hip-hop, and created a stage presence so intense that every performance felt like a battle between the body and the beat. But the final chapter of James Brown's life was far quieter than the world expected. In late December 2006, while many people were preparing for Christmas, Brown was still thinking about others. He had been involved in his annual tradition of helping provide gifts for children in need. Even near the end, that connection to community remained part of him. But behind the public energy, his health was declining. He had been dealing with serious medical problems, and his body was no longer as strong as the man fans remembered from the stage. On December 23, 2006, James Brown was admitted to a hospital in Atlanta with pneumonia-like symptoms. His condition worsened quickly. Just 2 days later, on Christmas morning, December 25, 2006, he died. The news felt surreal. The man whose music had made generations dance had left the world on one of the most emotional days of the year. Then came the public farewell at the Apollo Theater in Harlem, the place that had helped shape his legend. Thousands of fans came to see him one last time. In the photo described by the transcript, Brown lay in a gold-colored casket, dressed sharply, surrounded by flowers and memory. His hair was styled, his image carefully presented, almost as if he were ready for one final show. But what made that image so powerful was the silence. James Brown had built a career on motion, spinning, sliding, shouting, dropping to his knees, rising again. Now the hardest working man in show business was completely still. His final public image reminds viewers that even the loudest legends eventually fall quiet. But James Brown's rhythm did not die with him. It kept moving through funk, soul, rap, dance, and every artist who learned that music could hit like electricity. Chadwick Boseman died age 43 in 2020. Chadwick Boseman died at age 43 in 2020, and one of his final public images still breaks people's hearts because of what fans did not know at the time. To the world, Chadwick had become a symbol of strength. As Black Panther, he carried more than a superhero role. He carried pride, representation, elegance, and the emotional weight of a generation finally seeing a black king at the center of a global blockbuster. But behind that powerful image, Chadwick was quietly fighting a battle almost no one outside his closest circle understood. In 2016, Chadwick was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer. Instead of stepping away from work, he kept going. During the years that followed, he filmed major projects, attended premieres, trained for demanding roles, and gave performances that required focus, physical discipline, and emotional depth. Audiences saw strength, cameras saw confidence. Fans saw a hero, but behind the scenes, he was undergoing surgeries and chemotherapy, while the disease continued to progress. The transcript focuses on a charity video he posted in April 2020, honoring Jackie Robinson and supporting hospitals serving Black communities during the pandemic. The message was generous and meaningful, but many viewers were distracted by his appearance. Chadwick looked noticeably thinner. His face appeared more drawn than before, and his voice sounded softer. Some fans expressed concern, while others made cruel comments without knowing the truth. No one realized they were looking at a man in the final months of a private fight for his life. That is what makes the image so haunting now. Chadwick was not asking for sympathy. He was still using his platform to help others. Even while his own body was weakening, he was focused on service, dignity, and purpose. The strength in his eyes made the moment even more painful in hindsight. On August 28, 2020, Chadwick Boseman died at home, surrounded by his family. When the announcement revealed his cancer battle, the world was stunned. Suddenly, every recent photo, every thin appearance, every quiet public moment carried a new meaning. Chadwick's final image is powerful because it shows a different kind of heroism, not the kind built with costumes, action scenes, or movie lines, but the kind that exists in silence, when a person keeps giving, keeps working, and keeps standing with grace while fighting pain the world cannot see.
Jimi Hendrix, died age 27 in 1970. Jimi Hendrix died at age 27 in 1970. And the final images connected to his last day still feel strangely quiet for a man whose music once sounded like fire tearing through the sky. Hendrix was not simply a guitarist. He changed the language of the electric guitar itself. Before him, the instrument could sing, scream, bend, and explode. But after him, it felt almost limitless. His performances at Monterey, Woodstock, and on stages across the world turned him into a symbol of creativity, rebellion, and impossible musical imagination. But by September 1970, the man behind that sound was exhausted. Fame had surrounded him with pressure from every direction. Contracts, management disputes, touring demands, financial tension, and the emotional weight of being treated like a myth while still trying to live as a human being. London had become a temporary refuge, but peace was difficult to find. Sleep did not come easily. Rest was interrupted by stress, late nights, and the unstable rhythm of a life moving too fast. The transcript describes a final photo of Hendrix sitting in a garden, holding his guitar in a calm, almost dreamlike setting. The image is haunting because it does not look dramatic at first. There is no stage, no smoke, no feedback, no crowd screaming his name. Instead, there is stillness. He appears thoughtful, tired, and distant, as if the fire that once exploded through his music had turned inward. Only hours later, on September 18, 1970, Hendrix was found unresponsive in London. His death was later linked to choking after taking sleeping pills, with alcohol also involved. The official details remain painful because they point not to a grand final performance, but to something much more fragile: exhaustion, medication, and a young life that ended before anyone could slow it down. What makes Jimi Hendrix's final image so powerful is the contrast between the sound he created and the silence that followed. He had made the guitar speak in ways people had never heard before, yet his final chapter unfolded quietly, away from the noise of the stage. Jimi Hendrix's story reminds viewers that genius can burn brightly and still be vulnerable. He died at 27, but his sound never aged. Every solo, every distortion, every impossible note still feels like a message from a future he did not live long enough to see.
Eazy-E, died age 30 in 1995. Eazy-E died at age 30 in 1995, and the final image of him in a hospital bed remains one of the most sobering moments in hip-hop history. Before that image, Eazy-E was known as the fearless voice of NWA, sharp, controversial, and impossible to ignore. He helped bring gangsta rap from the streets of Compton into the center of American culture. His music was raw, direct, and often shocking, but it forced the country to hear stories many people had tried to ignore. To fans, Eazy-E carried the image of toughness. He was small in size, but his presence was huge. His voice cut through tracks with a cold confidence that made him sound untouchable. He helped build Ruthless Records, changed the business of West Coast rap, and became one of the key figures behind a movement that would influence hip-hop for generations. But in early 1995, that powerful image changed almost overnight. Eazy-E was admitted to the hospital after experiencing severe breathing problems. At first, many believed he was dealing with asthma or pneumonia. Then came the diagnosis that stunned fans and the music world. He had AIDS. The illness had already progressed severely, and his body weakened quickly. The transcript describes his final hospital image: a frail man lying in a bed, surrounded by medical equipment, far removed from the confident rapper fans remembered. The photo is painful because it strips away the performance and leaves only the human being. There were no stage lights, no studio control, no street armor. Just a young man facing a disease that had moved faster than anyone expected. On March 16, 1995, Eazy-E publicly announced his diagnosis. Only 10 days later, on March 26, 1995, he died from AIDS-related complications. The speed of his decline shocked the world and brought urgent attention to HIV/AIDS awareness within hip-hop and black communities. Eazy-E's final image remains powerful because it challenged the illusion that toughness makes a person untouchable. His death forced fans to confront vulnerability, health, and silence around a disease many people were afraid to discuss. He was a pioneer, a businessman, and a voice that changed rap forever. Even in tragedy, his story became a warning, and his influence never disappeared. Nipsey Hussle died, age 33, in 2019. Nipsey Hussle died at age 33 in 2019, and one of the final photos connected to his life remains painful because it captured him in the place he had fought so hard to transform. He was standing outside the Marathon clothing store in South Los Angeles, the business he built not just as a symbol of success, but as a promise to his community. In that image, Nipsey did not look like a man surrounded by danger. He looked calm, grounded, and familiar, a hometown figure standing in the neighborhood that shaped him. Nipsey Hussle was more than a rapper. He was a builder. His music carried street truth, ambition, discipline, and a long-term vision that separated him from many artists of his generation. He spoke about ownership, investment, patience, and self-reliance with the same seriousness other artists used to talk about fame. To his fans, he represented a different kind of success, not escaping the neighborhood and forgetting it, but returning with resources, ideas, and responsibility. That is what makes his final image so emotional. On March 31, 2019, Nipsey was outside his Marathon store, wearing casual clothes, smiling with fans, and moving through a space that belonged to his story. There was no grand stage, no music video setup, no performance. Just a man standing in front of the dream he had built brick by brick. For many people, that photo now feels like a portrait of purpose, and a reminder of how quickly peace can be broken. Minutes later, gunfire erupted outside the store. Nipsey was shot, and later died from his injuries. The news devastated hip-hop, Los Angeles, and anyone who had seen him as proof that transformation was possible. His death felt especially cruel, because it happened at the very place that represented his mission. Nipsey's final photo remains powerful, because it shows him connected to his legacy in the most direct way. He was not running from where he came from. He was standing inside it, trying to change it. His life ended violently, but the message he left behind did not end with him. The Marathon became more than a store. It became a symbol of vision, community, and a dream interrupted, but not erased.
Lisa Left Eye Lopes died age 30 in 2002. Lisa Left Eye Lopes died at age 30 in 2002. And her final image is heartbreaking because it came from a journey that was supposed to bring healing. To the world, Lisa was the fiery, creative spirit of TLC. The rapper with a sharp voice, bold personality, and unforgettable energy. She was playful, unpredictable, spiritual, and deeply expressive. In a group known for massive hits, powerful visuals, and messages about confidence and self-worth. Left Eye stood out as the spark that could not be contained. But behind the fame was a woman searching for peace. Lisa had lived through public controversy, relationship turmoil, industry pressure, and personal battles that made her life feel heavier than the colorful image fans saw on screen. By 2002, she had traveled to Honduras, a place she believed could help her reset. There, she spent time close to nature, writing, reflecting, and trying to step away from the chaos that had followed her for years. The transcript describes her final moments behind the wheel of a vehicle on a quiet road in Honduras. What makes the footage so devastating is how normal everything seems at first. Lisa is driving, smiling, and surrounded by the ordinary sounds of a trip. There is no warning that history is about to freeze that moment forever. She appears peaceful, almost lighter, as if she is moving toward a new version of herself. Then, in seconds, everything changes. On April 25th, 2002, while driving with others in the vehicle, Lisa swerved to avoid an obstacle and lost control. The vehicle crashed, and Lisa died from her injuries. She was the only person in the vehicle who did not survive. The fact that parts of that final journey were recorded made the tragedy feel even more intimate and painful for fans. Lisa Left Eye Lope's final image remains haunting because it does not show a star chasing attention. It shows a woman trying to heal. She had already given the world music, attitude, vulnerability, and a fearless creative identity. Her life ended at only 30, but her presence never disappeared. Every time TLC's music plays, Left Eye returns, bold, emotional, unforgettable, and still impossible to replace. Behind the flashing cameras and carefully managed public personas lived human beings navigating unimaginable burdens under the unforgiving weight of fame. For too many of these beloved icons, suffocating industry pressures and the fear of judgment forced them to mask their private turmoil, enduring their darkest, heartbreaking final hours in complete silence and heartbreaking isolation. Yet no single tragedy or haunting final photograph can ever overshadow the sheer magnitude of their life's work. While their final days were shrouded in pain or sudden heartbreak, their artistic genius, electrifying soul, and monumental contributions to Black culture remain completely immortal, forever echoing across generations as a timeless, untouchable legacy. Which of these heartbreaking final moments left the deepest impact on you, and whose incredible cultural legacy do you cherish the most today? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Hit that like button, subscribe to Hollywood Uncut, and ring the notification bell for more unvarnished true stories.